and welcome back to Mother Tongue, your eyes, ears, and finger on the pulse for all parents around the world. Let's get going, shall we?
We are so incredibly excited to welcome Rosie Davidson, aka Just Chill Mama, back to Mother Tongue. Rosie, I'm so happy to have you here on a Friday. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm raring to go to get chatting all things sleep, my favourite topic.
Do you know what? I'm actually very excited as well because I don't know if you know this, but I am back. I am back in the sleepless night with my newborn. Third time round. I can't. Do you know what? I'm gonna be this person who's gonna be a bit annoying and a bit smug, and say that we're almost sleeping through the night, and then I'm probably gonna have like a total 180, and then he's gonna start not sleeping. Now
Wow,
I've said
that's
this.
amazing. How old is he?
He is 11 weeks.
Oh, lovely.
But we have, do you know what? People will be like, oh my God, I can't believe your baby is sleeping through the night. But I will caveat that we've been extremely lucky with every single baby because they've been really big and they've always had these massive tummies. So you can shove them full of milk and then they just sleep better. I feel like that is a benefit of having a big baby that doesn't even feel like a newborn. I mean, I never got the newborn phase because they just come out like these giant beasts. But I get sleep. So, you know, we win some, we lose some.
There you go.
Anyway, Rosie, for anyone who doesn't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so my name's Rosie Davidson. I'm a paediatric sleep consultant. I'm a mum of 3. I'm the founder of Just Chill Baby Sleep, an infant sleep consultancy designed to get you the sleep that you need. We are evidence-based sleep coaches, which is quite rare actually in the world of sleep online. There's lots of people who aren't actually qualified to talk about what they talk about.
Yeah.
I'm also an author. I've written 2 books, so a book for baby sleep and also a children's book. I'm a podcaster myself and I'm a campaigner for childhood for the NSPCC.
Wow, just a few things then. Yeah. Just a few. Busy lady you are, busy lady. And can you tell me, I mean, I know you've told me this story before, but not everyone knows this. What made you decide to take this path? Because, you know, sleep is quite niche. Needed, but niche.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been what I call a high sleep needs person. And we all have our own individual sleep needs. And some people need more sleep than others. I'm somebody who needs a lot of sleep.
Me too.
Ideally, I need kind of 9 hours. And that is fine. Like they say, around 7 to 9 is what most adults need. Some people can operate on less. Some people actually even need more than that. But I'm at the top end, so I'm kind of 9 hours. I had my first baby and I was like, what is this? I honestly was like, I was shocked. And when she was a very small newborn, we had lots of issues with feeding, and I think that made things really difficult. Then that kind of calmed down. We had a period where it was sort of all right. I was up a couple of times a night. And then she hit around 3-4 months and she was up, honestly, every 45 minutes. And I remember saying to my mum, I've made a mistake. Like, like this is broken. Like, she's broken, I'm broken. I don't know what's going on. And I spoke to my health visitor, my GP, my brother-in-law, who's a paediatrician. We all kind of chatted about it. I was like, there must be something I can do because I can't live like this. And I worked with a kind of really old-fashioned sort of nanny. She gave me a bit of a routine to follow. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. I think I've been trying to get her to nap maybe when she wasn't ready. I've been like all over the place, trying all different things, but not trying one thing. And I got the advice from all these different people and worked out kind of a way to sleep train her essentially. And no joke, by the second night she woke up once, by the third night she slept through the whole night. And I was like, me and my husband were like, this has just changed our lives. We were in hell, now we're really happy. I could be the mum I wanted to be. And realised that I could help other people quite quickly. I started helping friends and family just kind of off the cuff, not officially. Decided to train, and then the rest is history.
And here you are, yeah. Helping thousands get their sleep back. I mean, I am the same as you. I am a high sleep need person. I need a lot of sleep, and when I don't have a lot of sleep, everything suffers. So sleep has always been really important to me, and people always, let's call it judge. I think there's a bit of judgment there. People always are like, oh my God, you can't put your newborn into a routine. I'm like, really? Can I not? I mean, it has been a little bit easier this time because my baby is bottle fed. We had some issues with breastfeeding, and I do think that it is easier getting them into a routine when they are bottle fed, and you know exactly how much they're drinking, and you can kind of space out the feed and stuff. But I feel like there's so many different experts now preaching different sleep training, sleep routine methods. What is like the crux of yours? Like, are you a kind of like cry to sleep person? Are you a gentle sleep person? Like, where are you falling on the radar?
So there's a lot to kind of unpack there. And first of all, what you were saying about newborns and, you know, having a routine or not, everyone is different. And this is where I think my sleep support, I like to cover kind of every base. Some people are really routine driven people, and I am one of those.
Me too.
And certainly with my second and third babies, they were in a fairly regular routine fairly early. But by regular, I just mean like the same things in the same order. And actually, when you've got a second or third child, they had to be up feeding at 7 because I had other children to get out to nursery. So that's kind of, they just fell into that as well. And another point I wanted to touch on, you saying about formula feeding, bottle feeding versus breastfeeding, and this is a huge debate. You can have a newborn who has a routine even if you're breastfeeding if you want to. My second baby was sleeping 7-7 at 10 weeks and she was breastfed.
Whoa, 10 weeks, that's amazing.
Yeah, and that was I think what I did with her, but also partly her temperament. And she was a very relaxed baby. Even I remember having her in the hospital and just looking at her, and she was really chilled. Like she was very different to my other children, and I know part of it was her personality. Like, she's not a baby that needed lots of soothing at night and lots of intervention. She was just relaxed, and yeah, she was a dream. So there is one part of it where it's like, it's temperament, it's how they are, so like nature. And then there's nurture, so what we do with them, so we can be quite organised. So in terms of my approach, like with smaller babies, I don't think it's to do with any kind of sleep training, cry out, anything like that. It's about giving them good foundations for sleep, i.e. thinking about routine, age appropriate kind of wake windows, regularity, because babies are naturally hardwired to look for patterns. So we can be quite organised, getting them to bed when they're tired. You know, they might be fussing around in the evening actually because they're tired. But we need to make sure there's nothing else going on. So like feeding issues, undiagnosed allergies, discomfort, those kind of things we need to address. And sometimes with younger babies that comes into it. And then as they get older, I do believe that you can use some crying methods if you need to, but they're not for everyone and you don't have to. So routine comes into it a lot, and I will always look at that with whatever age of baby. Then we're going to be looking at their sleep environment, making sure that's set up for them as well as possible. So what they're wearing, where they're sleeping, temperature, all those kind of like basic sort of sleep hygiene things. And then looking at how they settle to sleep and making changes to make that a sustainable way they fall asleep. Because if that's sustainable and it feels like it's working for you, and you're happy to do whatever that is in the night as well, that's fine. So for some people, they might feed to sleep, rock to sleep, bounce to sleep, hold to sleep. What might happen with your baby, not with all of them, but with a vast majority, they'll wake up in the night looking for that input because that's how they fell asleep. And it's really, really normal for us all to wake and stir during our sleep cycles in the night between light and deep sleep. And the body's doing what I call safety checks, where we're looking for, is there a change in our sleep environment? Because if there is, that means potential danger, and we might need to call out to mum or dad or whoever to help us back to sleep in the way that we know we fall asleep. So it's a kind of a sleep association. And of course, babies and children and everyone will occasionally wake up because they need a drink or want a cuddle or whatever. But if we can work on how they fall asleep, we can really transform the rest of the night. And there's lots of ways to do it, and I cover a whole spectrum from types of controlled crying, which are legitimate, they're evidence-based, we know they work. There's a huge database, or there's a huge amount of data behind this to support sleep training from an age-appropriate time, which would be 6 months onwards. We have lots of really strong data if it's something you want to try. But you don't have to do crying methods. You can do methods where you stay in the room with them the whole time that I cover. And there's methods where you can go really, really slowly and habit layer, which is what I call it, where we put in new habits to fade out old ones. You need a lot of patience, but you can make change. You don't have to be stuck in sleep deprivation.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you say about like if there's underlying issues, because I feel like third child now, I've kind of seen a small snippet of the rainbow of what sleep issues can look like. My first kid was a CMPA baby, and he would only sleep for 30 minutes. He would do a one sleep cycle and then wake up. And at night he was slightly better, but he was struggling and kicking and wriggling, grunting, making all forms of noises, uncomfortable from about 2 a.m. every single day. And I remember vividly bouncing him to sleep. Like just constantly, I would bounce on the ball, I would rock him, I'd have him in the bouncer. And then when we sorted out his problems, but then he was so used to being put to sleep a certain way, trying to rewind that is really quite hard. And I've had babies who literally my daughter, I put her down in the cot and she just soothes herself to sleep and has done since she was, tiny. So it's so hard. And I mean, what advice would you give to people who have had, these babies who have had terrible reflux or terrible stomach issues and it's really interrupted their sleep? They might not have figured it out until 4 or 5 months, where the kid it's almost become a habit, regardless if the pain is still there or not. How do we start to kind of work them out of those ingrained habits? Because they do get ingrained when they're that small, don't they?
Yeah, I think we need to unpick what's going on with the potential allergen, so removing the allergen if there is one, and giving time for that body to settle, or with reflux, trying to get to the root cause of it. So often it can be a feeding issue, so it can be, it could be their latch, it could be positioning. There's lots of things we can do. There could be tension after birth. If we can manage those things first, and once we're comfortable that we've done that, then hopefully we can work on changing those ingrained habits. So it might be if you bounce your baby to sleep where you're sat on a ball, which is really common, and especially for those who've got reflux or kind of allergy symptoms, babies are often happier when they're upright, which is why we end up finding ourselves in these positions. So you might bounce and then you bounce intermittently, so you've got more stillness. And this is a slow process. If you want to kind of go slowly, if you're unsure if they're still in discomfort, you might bounce them intermittently, then eventually get to a position where you're just holding them to sleep. Then you might graduate onto their crib or their cot, or you can even do a floor bed or your own bed, where the next stage is you lay with them to go to sleep with your hand on them. Then over the next course of a few nights, you're kind of removing your hand and just laying next to them and shushing them like they hear kind of a verbal cue, and then you're gradually moving away. Then you might put them in their cot. Then if they cry, you pat or shush them and gradually move towards the door. And I mean, I make it sound really easy. It's, it can be a slow process. They might cry, and I think it's really important to note that some crying can be normal. We don't want, when we're doing any kind of sleep training or sleep work, it's not that we want to stop all crying, because it's a way our children communicate with us. And it's a bit of a myth that we teach them to stop crying, because I mean, all of my children have been excellent sleepers, but they would still always cry if they needed, if their nappy had leaked or they were unwell or they were sick or whatever. They don't stop crying, but crying can be a really normal thing. And some babies actually even just always cry a little bit when they're tired or they're falling asleep. It's just what they do, and they grow out of it. And it's not anything we should necessarily worry about. But I think as parents, we can get really, really affected by cries naturally, because they're designed to get our attention, so we look after our children. But you can feel like, oh my god, I've got to stop this, I need to stop this cry right now because it's just horrible. And some of us are more triggered by crying than others for many complex reasons. But if we can just take a minute and just pause and just be like, okay, take a breath, what do they need? Maybe we'll just give them a minute, and sometimes they do just fall asleep in that time.
Another thing that I found that I've never really noticed before, and it was actually my husband who said it, sometimes when we put him to sleep, we've just started actually physically putting him to bed over the last few weeks in his cot at 7, the same time every night, so he kind of gets used to having a bedtime. And he'll normally do one sleep cycle, and he'll wake up and he'll shout, and it sounds very, very similar to a cry, but he's actually just going, rah, rah. And he's just being like, where are you? Come back now. And occasionally I might go in and pat him. Other times I don't. And he kind of looks around a bit and then goes back to sleep. But he's not crying. He's not, upset, scared, in pain or anything. He's just like, hello, are you out there? And I never really realised that before. And I know as a first-time mum, I would then run in and be like, oh my God, he's crying. Normally then pick him up and then totally disrupt whatever he's doing. But now I'm like, oh, actually, he's just chatting, kind of, well, shouting, which I find fascinating. But another thing that we've never experienced this before, we've never had this problem, is the swaddle, the transition into the swaddle. Now, my first kid hated the swaddle. He was in a bag near enough from birth. My second kid, she quite liked the swaddle, but when I started to move her out, she wasn't fussed either way. My third has loved the swaddle more than anything else. When you swaddle him, he's like, relaxes entirely, chills out, goes to sleep. And we've obviously had to start transitioning him out of his swaddle because he's starting to roll from his tummy to his back, which obviously he's not sleeping on his tummy at the moment, but still. And it's been really difficult. Any tips on how to transition these kids out the swaddle? I mean, we've nailed it now, but it was a process.
Yeah, it can be really tricky, and swaddling, if it works for you, is great. But I always say at the very latest 16 weeks they need to be out of it, or earlier if they're showing any signs of rolling at all. And actually we don't know when they're going to roll, so we need to be kind of on it, because if they were to roll in a swaddle, obviously it can become quite dangerous, so we don't want to be doing that. And the reason we swaddle is partly it mimics that kind of feeling of the womb, like being all scrunched up, but also babies have something called a Moro reflex, which is, if you may have seen them, where their arms kind of fly up in front of their face, and the idea is that if you swaddle them, you reduce that Moro reflex. But actually there comes a point where we want them to learn to develop in their body so that the reflex isn't happening anymore. So essentially they kind of absorb that reflex, and if we don't unswaddle them, they don't get the chance for that just to develop and that to stop happening. So we don't want them to hang on to that Moro reflex too long. So unswaddling is what we need to do. I tend to just advise one night, the first night, unswaddle one arm, and then the second night the other arm, and then the third night remove the swaddle completely. So you might still have it kind of on their lower body initially, and you might just have some really disrupted nights where you're kind of reassuring them. You might have to keep going in and like patting them, shushing them, or whatever it is you need to do. But I promise you, if you give them a chance to experience what that reflex is, then they kind of absorb it into their bodies, and they stop doing that.
It's so true. And actually now it's taken us probably a good week, but he's definitely relaxed into his sleeping bag a bit more. I think he probably still misses his swaddle, but still. And then, I mean, I want to talk about awake windows, and a lot of people talk about awake windows, and I remember before being very, very obsessed, especially during the day, about having these awake windows and then being awake for long enough. Newborns, obviously, when they're newborn, they sleep when they want to sleep. And I think that is, for us anyway, we've always kind of lent into that and let them do whatever they want to. At what point should we start taking cues for awake windows and actually trying to get those longer daytime sleeps?
Okay, so wake windows in themselves can be quite confusing for families, because if you Google them, you'll see loads of different like variations of what a wake window should be at different ages, and that's because there is no specific wake window guide. There's no evidence behind them that anyone has funded or done. Wake windows are just what we've noticed, and if you I like to reframe it as in, it's just how long your baby is happily awake for before they need to go down for a sleep. So you can observe your baby, and one of the also partly complicated things about them is wake windows can vary across the day. So some babies tend to be awake for less time in the morning, and it might get longer, so those wake windows might get longer as the day goes on. They might not. So it's not an exact science, but it's about just learning your baby's cues. And I would be looking at them kind of from 4 to 6 weeks old, and just kind of, you might start seeing a natural rhythm to your day where you're like, okay, they're up at roughly the same time each day. And if they're not, I would try and implement that as my one tip, like trying to start your day and end your day at roughly the same time each day, even if the rest of the day looks like all different and it doesn't really matter. So starting the day and ending the day at roughly the same time. And then you get to know, like, okay, if we start our day at 7, for example, you're like, they're ready to go down at 8:15 every day, roughly. And you're like, okay, that's when your nap schedule starts just naturally happening. You don't have to worry about it. But I would say having a regular kind of nap routine, it really depends on you and how you feel about it and your lifestyle as well. So some people are like, do you know what? I like to do different things with my baby every day. You know, I'll take them out. I'll go to like an art gallery with them because I just want to go out and enjoy my parental leave. Like, and the next day I'll meet a friend for lunch. The next day we might do a baby class. The next day I might want to stay at home. Like, so they're like, actually, I don't really want to start a routine as such until they're 6 months old when they're starting solids, when you kind of have to, because then you've got meals to plan in as well. But some people before that are like, I'll just do anything, or just whatever works. But other people are like, actually, and this was me, by kind of 6 to 8 weeks, I really need to know what I'm doing. I need to know that they're going to want a nap at this time, so then I can plan and be like, actually, I will meet my friend for coffee at this time, then we'll be home for this time. And for me, that makes life easier, but we're all so different, so there's no like hard and fast rules about it. It's about what works for you. But just, I would say for everyone, starting the day, ending the day at the same time each day. And if you're interested in working it out, you can kind of keep a bit of a sleep diary of your baby's wake windows. Yeah.
Okay, next one. Sleep breeds sleep. What are your thoughts on this?
This is a myth. And, well, out of context, it makes no sense, right? There's only so much sleep anyone will take within a 24-hour window. You can't make more sleep or a higher sleep requirement by giving someone more sleep. It makes no sense at all, right? So, but what I think people mean and where this comes from is, let's say you've got a baby who doesn't self-settle. They're up every hour of the night, like my daughter was before we sleep trained. Her naps were all over the place. She'd do like a 20-minute nap here, there. Then maybe she'd sleep on me for an hour. It was all everywhere. And once we got herself settling, she slept 12 hours overnight. She did like half an hour in the morning and 2 hours at lunch. That was amazing. And I was like, well, if you look at it in terms of that, people might think sleep breeds sleep. But actually, if you looked at it across 24 hours, she was sleeping that. It was just broken. So it feels like, oh, we've done this, and therefore, because she's doing that 2 hour nap, you know, she's sleeping over. No, she's still sleeping the same as she ever was. And people think, oh, you know, if you do a longer nap, they'll sleep longer at night. No, it's probably just that now they're self-settling, so they do the longer nap rather than having it broken.
And talking about settling and linking sleep cycles, I mean, from my experience anyway, I could be wrong, but I feel like a lot of babies go through that transition where they struggle to link their sleep cycles. Yeah. And I still, as a third-time mum, I get so annoyed by it. The other day, I came back, I was like, right, put the baby to sleep. And I was like, great, I've got some time to do some work. He should, in theory, now sleep for anywhere between 1.5 to 2.5 hours. 30 minutes later, he's screaming. And you know, when I was like in the middle of doing something, so I was like, I don't really want to like spend half an hour trying to put him back to sleep. I tried for like 5 minutes. I then took him out, put him into the bouncer. The sleep cycle thing, every single time, every single baby, it really screws me. And I can never think of the best way to tackle it. How do we teach our little ones to link their sleep cycles? Is there a magic trick? I really hope you say yes.
Well, it's tricky, and I think we need to frame it in that your son at the moment is still very little, and it can take them some time. And I remember my son went through a stage when he was like 4 months where he suddenly, that lunchtime nap, he'd wake up after half an hour, and it was really annoying. And I remember that feeling. I'm like, oh God, I've just started doing something. And I think there's two kind of options. One, you just ride it out and you're just like, do you know what? Let's just go out for a walk. And I used to just chuck him in the pram. We'd go for a walk. He'd go back to sleep, and I'd get another hour out of him and just have him in the pram, which isn't ideal for you if you're trying to do things. But sometimes we just need to be like, okay, for the next however many weeks, this might be what we have to do. Or you just say, do you know what, I'm just going to have to drop everything and get up and carry on with the day, and then they'll take a nap later and try and chill out about it. The other thing you can do is try and settle them to sleep. So, you're just reassuring them in their sleep space and trying to keep them there. But if they get really upset, I think, just get them up and crack on. But giving them the opportunity to self-settle at other times will help support that nap. So you might practice that at bedtime, which tends to be the easiest time to get them to fall asleep themselves. And that's because we've got biology on our side. Our sleep hormones are nice and high at bedtime. They're really normally ready to go to sleep. So if you practice them falling asleep independently at bedtime, that's by independently I just mean just literally you put them down, see what they do, see if they fall asleep. You might be reassuring them, you might pick them up, whatever it is, but essentially they do that last little bit without your help. You might calm them, and I always say it's your job as a parent to calm your child, to support your child, to reassure your child, but it's not your job to make them fall asleep. No one can actually do that. So kind of leaning into that and practicing at bedtime and maybe during the night and other opportunities will help them link those sleep cycles at lunchtime as well.
And what about sleep aids? What are your thoughts on sleep aids? So I've always been a white noise pro fan. Love a white noise machine. I've got so many of them now. I should start a shop. But for the first time ever, I have a child who takes a dummy, and I'm not sure whether I'm secretly delighted or I really don't know what's coming my way.
Okay, so there's a few different things to think about there. So white noise, if you want to use it, absolutely fine. Just make sure it's 50 decibels or under, and you can check on an app on your phone called the Decibel Checker app. I think that's if you Google it, or you should find it. So 50 decibels is a safe kind of volume. And ideally we want it around 2 meters away from their head. Sometimes it's a bit too close, so just bear that in mind. But white noise you can wean off any time. White noise is fine, and it's really helpful if you might have an Amazon delivery driver knocking at your door during nap time, or a dog barking, or a sibling who's going to wake them up. Dummies, if they're helping you, there's nothing wrong with them. And certainly for babies we touched on earlier who might have CMPA or reflux, allergies, it can be really quite soothing. But if a dummy isn't working for you, i.e. they're waking up because it's falling out at night, then I would probably get rid of it. And you probably go cold turkey, I'm afraid. The other thing with dummies is a lot of people don't realise you're only supposed to use them at sleep times. They're not designed to be used at all other times of the day when they're awake, because it can interfere with their speech development. So even from a very young age, our babies are looking at us, and you'll see them copying things that you do with your mouth. So if you stick out your tongue, they'll try and do it. If you blow raspberries, they might try and do it. And if they've got a dummy in their mouth, it stops them doing that. So if you are using one, I'd reserve it for sleep times only if possible, or maybe if you're on a car journey and they're really unsettled, that kind of thing. But you can get rid of a dummy anytime. It just might be a few nights of upset and reassurance until they get used to not having it, a bit like the swaddle.
Is there an optimal time to get rid of the dummy, would you say?
The NHS in the UK says between 6 and 12 months is the guidance, and that's to do with oral development. So it's partly like the speech and language, but also the way that our jaw and our mouths develop. If we're sucking all the time, it can change the positioning. And it can change the positioning of the teeth as they come through. And some people say, oh, it's baby teeth, it doesn't matter. But where the baby teeth sit can influence where the adult teeth are going to sit as well. And in some extreme cases, it can narrow the upper palate, which can change how we breathe and how we talk.
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. And what about other sleep aids? Anything that you love? Anything that you dislike?
I mean, I don't think there's anything that I dislike other than things that aren't safe. So like sleep positioners, i.e. if you've seen like nests and things which aren't actually safe for sleep, even though some of them have really clever marketing, we should just have a clear flat mattress for our babies. There's pillows that you might see on the market which also aren't advised for under the age of 12 months. So it's really, there are things out there that aren't safe. Cot bumpers is another one, which I know is tricky because some people find their little ones might bang their head or get their arms caught. But it's much safer for that to happen and you to intervene and reassure them than it is to have something that's unsafe where they could risk strangulation, suffocation, getting caught underneath.
Yeah, no, okay, that's good to know. That is good to know. And then what about sleep regressions? Do you believe in sleep regressions? Are they a real thing? Can they be avoided?
Okay, so sleep regression don't really exist other than there is a sleep change around the age of 4 months in our sleep architecture. So the way that our sleep cycles work, they change between the ages of, it's normally around 3 to 4 months. There's not an exact science to exactly when it will happen in terms of timeline, but there will be a change. For some babies, you don't notice it at all. And generally, I do find the ones who are self-settling, you don't really see a change. I didn't see a change, certainly in my second child. My third, we had this thing with the lunchtime nap, but that was it. So you might see a change, you might not, but some people see a change where suddenly the baby's doing really short naps, waking up overnight, just really unsettled. And it's because their sleep cycles mature and they become more like an adult sleep cycles. They're more aware of their environment as well. This coincides with them kind of almost like waking up. They're not a newborn anymore, so they know what's going on. They get FOMO, and it's a really good opportunity actually to think about self-settling around this age. In terms of other sleep regressions, no, there's no evidence at all for any sleep regression. Sleep doesn't regress. We're always progressing and developing. Sleep changes can happen at any time, right? And that's why if you speak to lots of people, there's a regression every single month, because there's no set timeline for our babies. If you think about it, they all walk, talk, crawl, roll over at different times. We can't say it's going to happen on this week and therefore it's this sleep regression. Sometimes physical development can have an impact on sleep, although actually the data to support that is quite minimal. There is a little bit, but we know that maybe if they're learning to crawl, you might suddenly see them crawling around in their cot and practicing that skill at night. More to the point, I see it's actually nap transitions, i.e. changing sleep needs. So it might be that, somebody comes to me and said, oh, my 6-month-old was sleeping through the night, everything was great. We're now going through the 10-month sleep regression. We haven't changed anything. What's happened? And what's actually happened is they need less sleep in the day. Therefore, they weren't ready for bed when you tried to put them to bed. Then you got into this like bedtime battle. You started doing all the things you don't want to do. And then you've found yourself with a baby that's not sleeping anymore. So that can happen, but it also could be, illness, teething, travelling, starting nursery, new sibling. Anything can affect sleep at any time, and there's no kind of set timeline other than this 4-month sleep regression does happen, but all the others, just don't worry about them.
And what do you think are common mistakes that parents make when it comes to sleep? If we are a first-time mum listening to this and we've just had a baby, what common mistakes do you see that we can try and avoid?
I don't like to shift blame and huge responsibility onto parents when it comes to sleep, because sometimes you do just get like that sensitive baby and you need to kind of lean into that. But I think the mistake that I see is people feel like they're stuck and there's nothing you can do about it, and they feel like this is just what babies do, and we just need to accept that sleep is just like this. And when I see people and they've been sleep deprived for 5 years, and it's like, there is help out there. There's people like me who can support you to get the best sleep that you and your baby can get. We can meet your baby where they are, and there's always improvements that can be made. Even if you're like, do you know what, I can't do anything when my baby cries. It's just not for me. Don't believe in that. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at optimizing everything else and make some changes in the most gentle way possible. And you can do that as well.
Okay, that's good to know. And then before we start to wrap up today, what myths are there around sleep? Apart from the sleep regression that we've already touched upon, what other myths are there that you can debunk for us?
I would say, so we've covered off sleep regressions, we've covered off sleep breeds sleep. What are the other myths? Yeah, I can't think of any. I'm trying to yeah, I guess that your baby has to cry to self-settle, that there's not always crying, and that I guess actually a big one is that sleep training is cry it out, because it's
Yeah,
not.
no, I agree with this. I often say, oh, we know we're sleep training our baby, and people are like, you can't sleep train your baby. Your baby's only a newborn. And I'm like, but it's not, I'm not really training him because it's totally normal. It's like he doesn't even know it's happening. I'm just putting him into a routine. And I think in a weird way, for me anyway, I know everybody's different, but for us, actually starting to put him in a gentle routine means that you never have to really do the cry it out. You never have to get into that difficult phase where you're battling with sleep because they don't even know what you're doing. They don't even realise it's happening. They just gently go into this nice little routine where hopefully they start sleeping through.
Yeah.
One thing that I do think though does happen, and we're starting to get into that territory now where what we normally do, and this is not necessarily what we've done with the others, but at the moment we put him down at 7. We dream feed him before we go to bed, which is quite early. It's normally around 9 p.m. I'm like shoving about 100 mil. And now he's started to wake up anywhere between 5 and 7. That is kind of when he wakes up. And I'm worried that we're going to start making him an early riser, which we don't need that in our lives. How can we kind of stop the early rising happening? Because I mean, it's a massive problem for so many mums that kids just learn how to get up at 5 a.m. every day. And I mean, who wants that?
Yeah, I mean, early rising, there's quite a few things to unpack there, but certainly in your situation, I'd push that dream feed to 10 o'clock, which I know is tricky because you're tired, but if you're doing a dream feed, i.e. he's not waking up for it, you're essentially waking him for it, and you're choosing when that feed happens. I'd make it 10 o'clock and then he'd probably go through till 7. It sounds like, he's happily going through nearly then anyway.
Yeah.
In terms of early rising, we need to make sure they're not going to bed too early because there's only so much sleep anyone can take. If you're putting your baby to bed at 6 o'clock in the evening, they could be up at 4 in the morning because some of them are only going to sleep for 10 hours only. I mean, 10 hours is great. So we need to just think about that and think like logically, are they just going to bed too early? Should we push it a little bit later? Is it that they're having too much day sleep? So sometimes if our little ones are catching up on lost sleep with lots of really long naps in the day, it can impact the night. Are they hungry? So you can mitigate that by, with the dream feed, for example, doing a feed kind of somewhere where you choose. Or if we're talking toddlers or older children, do they need a pre-bedtime snack? It's quite a long time to go if they're having their tea or dinner, whatever you call it, at like 5 p.m. to go all the way through till 8 a.m, 7 a.m. in the morning with no food. It's quite a long time.
Yeah.
So a healthy pre-bedtime snack like banana porridge, nut butter on toast or something like that. And is it self-settling? So the early hours of the morning, much, much harder to resettle because our sleep hormones aren't on our side anymore. So melatonin and a hormone called adenosine, sleep pressure, which is really high. It's our drive to sleep at the beginning of the night. They've dropped off. So around 5 a.m, cortisol, our stress hormone, which is demonized a lot, but it's great, it's how we wake up in the morning, starts to rise. So we're much more alert. So if we do wake between sleep cycles at say 4 or 5 a.m, if they don't know how to self-settle, it's much harder and they'll be wide awake. So I see it all the time. The babies who don't get themselves to sleep are awake at 5.
Yeah, we've to be honest, I find it so interesting. Both my toddlers now, if I go into their room in the middle of the night, they are dead to the world. I could prod them, poke them, pick them up, move them around. They won't move. If I even make the slightest noise at 5:30 a.m, they're awake.
Yeah.
It's even like a tiny squeak. It's like they hear it and they're wide awake. I'm like, oh, okay, no, we won't do this. We're going to end today with the tip and a product. If you were to leave us 2 nuggets of information, what would they be?
Okay, do my online course, read my book, or have a one-to-one call with my team. So I have instant access online courses which are designed to help you build your own plan. They're at your fingertips. I've also got my expert team who have a wealth of experience around infant sleep development, behaviour. We do potty training. We cover absolutely everything. And my book is there as well, which is a great option if you don't want to invest particularly at this moment. But yeah, I would say come on down to my Instagram page. I've got loads of information. I've put everything out there. So even if you just want to have a look, just know that sleep support is there. So in terms of products, I am the product that you need. Don't spend loads of money on crappy devices that don't have evidence to support them. Let's do what we know works.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm going to link all of this in the show notes, Rosie. So thank you so much for all your words of wisdom today. I'm definitely going to take some of this on board and hopefully give it a few more weeks and he'll be a 7 till 7 kind of lad. Can't wait for that. Very excited. But thank you so much, Rosie. And for anyone who wants to reach out and say hi, where can they find you on Instagram?
At just_chill_mama, or our website justchillbabysleep.co.uk, and I have my podcast, the Just Chill Parenting Podcast. My book is the Just Chill Baby Sleep book, so if you Google, you'll find me.
Yay! You've been amazing, Rosie. Thank you so much for your time today, and hopefully we'll be seeing you again very, very soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Stay there. Stay. I've just got to...